Well, Carlos, so good to catch up, and happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
And we're so thankful that we're able to hear your story today, and it's just been such an encouragement to me. I wanted the rest of the church to hear it. So let me start by asking, Carlos, how do you spend your time? What do you do during the week?
Yeah, so I work as a rheumatologist. That's in Liverpool, mainly in the public hospital there.
Now, let me just stop you there. Just help us get our head around what a rheumatologist is.
Yeah, sure. So we specialise in joint problems
Okay.
and autoimmune problems.
Okay.
So both young and old.
Okay.
So that takes up a lot of my time. And I'm married to Malethi, and we have two boys, Ethan and Ollie. And we live locally, but we haven't always done so. We've moved around before this. So we joined Norwest last year. Prior to that, we were at a few different locations as part of my training. So we've been to Orange, Canberra, Blue Mountains, and more recently here.
Yeah, busy life.
Yeah.
Yeah, busy work, busy home. Carlos, one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you today, and I wanted people at Norwest to hear your story, is because you've shared with me before about a challenging time that you went through a number of years ago. Tell us a bit about how that all started.
Yeah, so it was about 3 or 4 years ago, and a few different things happened at the same time. We had some stressful circumstances. My son was unwell with some kidney issues. I was finishing up becoming a specialist, so work was quite demanding. And in fact, we had a colleague die unexpectedly at work. My dad was unwell too. He was having some fairly major surgery. And then on top of that, I had some physical symptoms, which were difficult to explain, including recurrent migraines, abdominal pain.
And you didn't know what they were?
Yeah,
Right.
not at that time. And also the other thing that made it very difficult was I started having quite intense memories of a previous traumatic experience that happened about 15 years prior.
Wow.
And so they came back quite vividly.
Okay.
So it was all sort of numerous things happening around the same time of life.
Right, so it sounded like a season of just surviving.
Yeah.
A situation like that's obviously going to have big implications and impacts on parts of your life. So how did those challenges for you impact home and marriage and being a dad and work? How did that all play out?
Yeah, so I think on the outside I was functioning. I was still going to work and still trying to help at home and sort of doing those day-to-day things. But if you ask my wife what I was like back then, I was very emotionally distant.
Did you feel that yourself?
Yeah, I think I felt like a bit of a robot,
Yeah, right.
a bit numb.
Yep.
I felt tense, quite anxious. I found it very difficult to unwind, even if it was a weekend or evening or holiday. And the other thing that I found very difficult at the time was I found it very difficult to trust God. He wasn't answering my prayers the way I wanted him to. He wasn't fixing things on my schedule, and I found it very difficult to relate to him in prayer, and also when I went to church or read the Bible.
So, Carlos, you obviously had been through this very difficult time. What helped you start to process some of these things? What helped you grow through that? Because you're a different man today than 4 years ago.
Yeah, we actually had a men's convention in our church at the time, which was in Rudy Hill. And one of the senior pastors there, Ray Galea, who is someone who I really look up to and respect. He actually said something which really stuck with me. And he said 50% of people have seen a counsellor, and the other 50% of people need to see a counsellor. And he shared his own story of some of the struggles he's been through and how just chatting with people about it was very helpful. I think that gave me permission to reach out for help. I wasn't sure exactly what kind of help I needed or was looking for. But it started off with seeing a counsellor in the church, which was a really good start. And then at work, my boss at the time actually asked me to attend a training session on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the workplace.
Okay.
And that's because we had some junior doctors there going through some very difficult times, and he thought it might be helpful for me to upskill in that area.
Right, so it wasn't for your benefit, it was for theirs.
Yeah, correct.
Wow.
And when I went there, as I was listening to the content and what the presenter was saying, I thought some of this may well be relevant to me. So afterwards, I contacted the presenter. He put me in touch with a psychologist who was extremely helpful in just teasing apart some of the mental symptoms that I was experiencing, and also the physical, which I think in retrospect related to a previous trauma. I think the other very helpful thing was in tandem with that more recently. I've attended one of the growth groups here Norwest with James. And in that growth group, we've just had the opportunity to rediscover and relook at the fundamental beliefs about this God of the Bible, who he is, how he acts, how he feels about us as people. And while I've been sort of asking big questions in my own life, it's been incredibly helpful to go back and find out that actually the God of the Bible is a loving dad, and that he does call us his children. And God's kindness in the last few years has not primarily been displayed in removing all stressful and difficult circumstances. So some of those circumstances have become better, but there have been newer stressful ones, with COVID being a good example.
Yeah, right.
So I think if looking back, I've seen his discovering who he is and his character, and how he's actually demonstrated his love, not through fixing everything, but through coming as Jesus, has been incredibly helpful.
Yeah. At church, I know I've said plenty of times that, if we spend time learning God's character, we know more about who he is, and that's a comfort to us or whatever. What do you mean when you say that learning more about God's character has been helpful?
So I think the first thing I'd say is that idea of a loving father has really helped transform how I view things. And I think there's also a lot of assurance we can take. Things like the knowledge that one day there will be that day without pain, suffering and sorrow. And also that he does work in these circumstances for our good, regardless of what those circumstances are. The assurance I've gained from just asking those big questions of who this God is that we believe in, and then going to the Bible and finding that this is in fact an incredibly loving, good God who means the best for us, both now and long term. That's sort of transformed my experience of this all. Yeah.
Amazing. So let me ask you this. It's Father's Day, and I'm so thankful that you've shared this. But when you slow down and deeply consider the father you want to be to your own kids, the husband you want to be to Malithi, the doctor you want to be, just the man you want to be, how has a season like this impacted that and shaped you in those roles that you play, in those roles that you are?
I think in the past, I thought that I would be the best dad I could be, for example, if I had things sorted, under control, in line, in check, myself, things around, everything
together.
And I think what I'm discovering is that I'm the best dad I can be when I depend on Jesus and his strength each day. And the more I depend and discover his love for us, that's when that will naturally flow out more to my boys and God willing, the people around me as well.
And so how do you feel about your boys seeing a dad who perhaps doesn't hold it all together all the time, but actually is flesh, blood, and fragile in many ways? How do you feel about that?
It's challenging. It's not what I'd planned to project, I suppose. But I think the alternative, which would be for me to maintain an image that I've got it all together all the time, just wouldn't be real.
Yeah. Carlos, thank you so much. There's a view of masculinity in Australia that's pretty toxic, I think, and pretty shallow, and pretty weak in many ways. But you and Malithi mean the world to us, and what we've heard today from you is a vulnerability and a courageous Christian manhood, and it's a delight to hear. It's a challenge to me personally, and I hope men in our church hear this and think, wow, may the Lord Jesus make us more like that. God bless you. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thanks.